G'day and welcome back to RC Model Reviews, and on the bench today is the Runcam Split, and I'm sure a lot of you people are saying, why has it taken Bruce so long to review the Runcam Split? Everyone else has already reviewed it. We've had RC Shim, we've had Painless 360, every man and his dog has reviewed this camera, so why are you even bothering, Bruce? Well, tell you what, first of all, I live on the back side of the planet, so the camera was pretty late getting to me compared to other people, and I've been searching for reasons not to like this camera because Runcam have produced some pretty good stuff in recent times, and you know, it's starting to sound a bit like a broken record when I say this is a great Runcam product, and I initially had misgivings about this product. I thought, yeah, you know, who is going to want to put a CMOS camera with its attendant latency issues on a racing mini quad? Yes, a lot of people fly with the CMOS camera. If you're really top notch though, you know, every millisecond of latency, it can make the difference between hitting a gate and going through a gate, or you know, negotiating a corner properly. These little things can make a huge difference at the highly competitive level. And then I stopped and thought, yeah, actually, like Team Nana in the bottom 10% is not going to make a blind bit of difference to my flying. And most people, obviously 90% of people, are not going to really notice the latency issue. Or if they do, they're going to get used to it pretty quickly. I've already done some coverage of latency and the effect it has on flying, and I've noted how quickly your brain adapts to latency in the loop. And it doesn't totally mitigate the latency, but it can adapt pretty quickly. And unless you're flying to win the world championships, yeah, probably you're going to like the convenience of this thing, and you're going to be able to accept the slightly higher latency that the CMOS camera sensor produces. But what I want to do in this video is, obviously I'm not going to, I'll cover some of the ground other reviewers have covered. I'll tell you what it does, but I want to look at the pros and cons. After having it on the bench for over a week, what do I like about this thing? What don't I like? How could they have improved it? And you know, how many stars out of 10 would I give this camera? Right, let's start off by taking a closer look. Now the first thing you're obviously going to notice is that, hang on a minute, it comes in two parts, and this bit doesn't even have a case. What's the biz there? What's going on? Well, the camera sensor here is pretty much the same one, I think, as is in the Runcam Eagle and the Runcam 3. And we know that sensor is very, very good. It's a fantastic dynamic range. The wide dynamic range is unequaled in the industry. It is just gobsmackingly good, which is a big plus, big pro, you know, big fantastic thing. The size of this thing is about the same as the Swift Mini. In fact, it probably fits the Swift, I think it fits the Swift Mini mounting hardware. And a big bonus if you buy this is you do get some really good mounting hardware, so you can retrofit your existing models. Even if you're using a full-size Swift or a Swift Mini, you can just bolt this in place, no problems at all. Makes it real easy to convert from your existing camera to the Split setup. And the second part, of course, is this board here, which has all the fancy electronic gubbins, all the black magic that takes the signal from the camera, records it on a microSD card, and turns it into an SD video signal to go to your video transmitter. All that really clever stuff is done on this board, and it's actually, there's a lot of gubbins in here. They've got a label over it, and this one's getting a bit tatty now because I've had it around for so much, but underneath here there is a hell of a lot of stuff going on. Let me see if I can show you. You've got this price, whoops, this is just a sticky label. You know, oh man, stuck to my finger now. Underneath here we've got some really serious stuff going on because this is a high definition recording camera. And it is really basically the guts of a Runcam 3 out of the box onto a board like this. Got this Ambarella processor here. This is the same one that the GoPro 3 uses. So this is not a 4K camera, not a 4K. It does 1080p 60 frames, which is probably all you really want or need for mini quad stuff. I mean, you know, 4K, you know, rendering and editing that stuff is a real nightmare. This at 1080p is super good for almost everything you want. You've got a micro SD slot here. This is a bit of a downside. I'm not that chuffed on this. I'll talk about the pros and cons in a moment, but yeah, that could have been done better. There's a microphone on board. Woohoo! You know, everyone loves a microphone. You get the audio, although all you're going to get is and whiz out of a mini quad, but hey, it's there if you need it. There is a little buzzer down there, a little beep, 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 and then there's a little ferrite inductor for a regulator. There's a crystal down here. There's lots of bits and pieces. Things to note about this thing is, unlike your average FPV setup, this is quite fussy about its voltage. Normal FPV cameras like the Swift and the Swift Mini and the Eagle, you can throw anywhere from 5 to 22 volts into them and they don't care at all. They've got really good regulators to handle that. This is really fussy. You can only put 5 volts into this baby, or if you use the battery terminals, you can put 4.2, a single cell LiPo there. But if you go through the micro USB port, which is, where is it? I can't find it. There it is, micro USB port. If you go through the micro USB, or you go through this connector here, which is specially set up as an alternative, you can only put 5 volts into this baby. Not 6 volts, not 10 volts, not 22 volts, only 5 volts. If you would like a smoke system in your FPV model, then by all means put more than 5 volts in there, but it's going to be a really expensive smoke system and you won't get any video afterwards. So yeah, really careful. Which brings up a really important issue. This thing sucks the juice like you wouldn't believe. It's got a lot of stuff to go on in there. That little Ambarella processor gets quite toasty to the touch, and this thing draws about 600 milliamps. That's over half an amp, which could be important if you've got like a mini quad and you've got a 1 amp BEC driving your flight controller and your receiver. Probably at the moment a 1 amp BEC is more than enough because your receiver might take 150 milliamps, possibly if it's got telemetry. Your flight controller might take 60 to 100 milliamps. I don't know, I've never measured. So you've got plenty of headroom. But if you throw another more than half an amp on there, you may find that the BEC can't cope and you'll get a thing called fold back, which means it just shuts down and the voltage disappears, especially when you turn this on or when it draws a surge of current. So you need to do a little bit of an audit of your system. Make sure that your 5 volt supply is going to be able to handle an extra 700 milliamps, because sometimes this peaks at well over 600 milliamps. So something you need to know. If your video transmitter has a 5 volt output and you're going to use that, make sure it can deliver 600 to 700 milliamps. Oh God, it's a long day. 600 to 700 milliamps. Otherwise, you could have some really bad experiences where everything stops. And speaking of everything stopping, there's another thing which I'll talk about in a moment in terms of the bad features. But you know, these are just requirements. You've got to have that really grunty 5 volt supply to drive this baby. Not much else to see here except this. See this little black cable? This, I think, may be a little bit of a weakness in this camera. It is a strength and a weakness all at the same time. But before I get onto that, we've got a Wi-Fi module connector here. You can buy a little Wi-Fi module, plugs in there, it enables you to set this up just like the Runcam 3 from your smartphone. Now, mechanically, it's a bit of a faff. It comes out at right angles to the board. Meh. But for $5, why wouldn't you buy it? You never know, you might need it, you might not. But for $5, if you've got it and you don't use it, it's not a big deal. But if you need it and you don't have it, that is a big deal. There you go. So I'd go for the $5 add-on Wi-Fi thing as well. Right, I guess you need a class 10 card, of course, or better, because this is 60 frames HD. It needs a really fast card. So don't skimp on your card. Don't use the 2 gigabyte card that came with your Apple 5. That's not good. Well, whatever, your smartphone, it's not going to work. Right, now let's look at some of the things that I don't like about this camera, because there are a few, I've got to say, there are a few things wrong with it. Let's start with the bad things. The camera sensor itself is connected to this board by way of this cable. This is what we call a flat flex cable. It's called a flat flex cable for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's flat and it's flexible. It makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, there's not a lot of options when you need to transfer this number of, or have this number of conductors joining up to a circuit board. This is one of the few options you really have, but flat flex cables can be a little bit unreliable if they are used in an environment where there's a lot of movement or vibration, or if there's any stress on them. If we take a look at this, I'm reaching around the camera now, so excuse me if I bang it. If we look at this, there's no strain relief on this cable. You notice it's just like, this can bend up and down and it puts stress along here. And what I've seen on many, many occasions with flat flex cables is eventually the plastic and the copper fatigues and it cracks and breaks. And if you're lucky, it becomes intermittent, otherwise it just stops working altogether. So when you install this, you're going to have to put some strain relief. I'd say a cable tie right around the board to hold that so it's not going to bend at that point. That's the minimum that you want to do. Remember, you want to make sure you can get it out. So don't go putting hot glue or anything over there, because you'll never be able to get it out again. And it's going to be a product or a part of the system that you will replace in time, because this will fail. I tell you now, this will fail eventually. Just simply by the flexing, just the vibration of motors, eventually it'll fail. So that's one thing to be concerned about. At this end on the camera here, there's a bit of strain relief because it's clamped between the case and the back. But again, you've still got a point where there's going to be flexing, so there will be a risk of that actually fracturing. So everything needs to be mounted firmly with strain relief. It would have been nice if they could use a different type of connector here that was more suited, but as I say, the options are pretty limited when you get to that many conductors on a cable. Now, another problem I've encountered with this camera, I thought it would happen and it does, is if you configure this to automatically start recording, as the default is when you turn the power on, it starts recording. The video comes from the sensor onto the board and it starts creating files on the microSD card. So your card starts filling up, and that's fine. There's a little red flashing dot on the corner of the screen to show that it's recording, all well and good. But when your card becomes full, you get this big thing pops up on the screen. Look at that. it's distracting and it could obscure your vision. If this is the middle of a race and you're on the last turn and that pops up, it could really sort of upset your day. So yeah, you've got to make sure there's enough space left on your card, or that you don't have it recording if there's any risk that a full card would ruin your day. So something that needs to be looked at. I don't think they need to have such a big, bold symbol right in the middle of the screen once the card gets full. Perhaps they could just turn the red dot yellow or something, or turn it into a cross in the top right hand corner of the screen so you can see, but it's not going to distract you from what you're doing. That's something that could be fixed in firmware. I hope they do that, because honestly I think some people are going to get pretty ticked if their card is almost empty. The card is almost full, they've got a race coming up, they don't have time to plug in the computer and wait to download the files that are already on there, and they can't get at the microSD slot because they're in a stack and there's not enough height to pop that little metal tab up. So they risk it, and then on the last corner the screen gets covered by this massive icon that tells you your card's full. Nah, not good enough. Another option, of course, would be to put the loop recording on, which is where I'm pretty sure this camera, I looked in the options, it'll record in segments. I don't know, I'll have to check again, look in the description, I'll check again and see whether you can have it record over the oldest file. So basically what will happen is if you fill the card up, it'll start rewriting over the oldest or the earliest recording you made. Most of these cameras do that. I'm not sure if this does it, but if it does, that's an option to use instead. This board is designed to fit in your standard mini quad style stack, where you have your flight controller, you might have a 4-in-1 ESC, you might have an OSD, you got a whole lot of circuit boards all stacked with little spaces into a nice vertical column, and this is designed to go on that stack if you want it to. You don't have to, but the holes match up, so that makes mounting it pretty damn simple, except for one thing. A lot of quads are getting quite constrained vertically in the stack. You might have a top plate and a bottom plate and the stack is in there, and you run out of vertical room. And even if you can squeeze this in, you may not be able to change the SD card, because the way the SD card or the micro SD card mechanism works is it's a bit like a SIM card mechanism. You pull this little thing back and then it pops up like this. So if you look at this, you've got to have that amount of vertical space to get the card in and out. And if you've got a frame that's just a couple of mils higher than the board, well, you're buggered. You can't do anything. And also, it's pretty faffy. It's not like just push it in and let it click. You've got to get it in the right place, and especially remember, if you're doing this inside a quad, you won't have this level of access. So it's going to be a bit of a damn nightmare to make it work. I think I got it that time. No, I got it wrong. See, so yeah, it's faffing around. It is. I don't like that. I don't like it. It's a really bad aspect of the machine. And of course, you don't. If you have your card on there and you have this mounted in your stack, you may not be able to get the card in and out easily, so you have to use the micro USB to download your footage. And the problem with that is that it's really slow. 60 frame per second HD video produces some big files. So you don't want to have to be there spending a long time waiting and having your quad sitting there to download the video files. Much nicer if you can just whip the card out. Also really important if you are doing a whole day's filming and your card gets full, well, putting a new one in, you either got to stop and download the old one, then clear the files from it, or faff around and try and get a new card in there. So much easier with something like the Runcam 3 or a GoPro session. Pop the card out, pop a new card in. It's easy, it's simple as that. Simple as. So that's a bit of a downside, this micro SD card thing. One more negative, this is a CMOS camera, so if you do have vibration in your quad, it's gonna give you jello. Having said that though, I know the Runcam 3 is actually one of the least jello sensitive cameras I've used in terms of high definition recording cameras. So I would expect that since this has the same sensor, jello on this will not be as bad as some other CMOS cameras. And so yeah, it is something you have to live with if you've got a shaky quad, but it's always nice to have smooth quads anyway. And one benefit is that I don't know how many times in the past I've been flying with my CCD camera and there's been jello that I haven't noticed. And I haven't noticed it until I've looked at the HD recording that I've done with another camera later, and then I've realized, oh, this is useless, it's full of jello. The CCD camera didn't show that, but if you're flying with this, what you see on your goggles is going to be pretty much what you get on the HD recording in terms of jello. So it does give you the ability to determine if the recording is going to be jello or not before you've even finished. That's got to be a good thing. But yeah, jello will be a bit of an issue from time to time. Okay, one of the biggest annoyances with something like the Runcam 3, the GoPro Session, any standalone HD recording camera, is that sometimes the battery goes flat. And you've finished recording for the day. Yes, you can recharge it through your USB charger in your car and things, but it takes time. It could take a couple of hours sometimes to charge one of these high action cameras. With this thing, of course, it gets its power from your main flight pack, so you're never going to run out of battery. It's always going to have battery. That's excellent. So you're never going to have that situation that oh my goodness, I wanted to get a really good flight but my battery's flat. And even better, because you can have the auto record function, you're never going to do what I do so often, is take off, get halfway through a flight and say, oh gosh, did I actually start recording that or not? I can't remember because I'm old and I forget. Or getting to the end of the flight and realizing that you didn't press record, so all that wonderful stuff you did is lost forever and you'll never get to relive it in the peace and comfort of your own home later on, looking at it on your computer screen. So that's a really good bonus. I like those features. They're really good. The other thing I like is that this thing has a replaceable lens. Look at that. See that? Replaceable lens. So if you smack it up real bad, hey, it's not an expensive job to fix it. Those are good things. And then, of course, there is the fact that this is really a Runcam 3 out of its box. And the Runcam 3 has really, really impressive video performance. It's maybe the bit rate is a little slow at times, but the wide dynamic range is fantastic. And the image is nice and sharp. The clarity is there. So you're going to get some really good quality footage from this. Okay, now here's something I haven't seen any of the other reviewers touch on. And that is the potential that the Runcam Split has to become a Runcam 3. As I mentioned, basically you've got the guts of a Runcam 3 here and you've got the sensor element out of a Runcam 3. Maybe you can turn the damn thing back into a Runcam 3. I made this suggestion to Runcam. They don't seem to have followed up on it, but I thought it was a pretty good suggestion. Why don't you tell me in the comments section what you think? But here's what I'm thinking. This board is not the Runcam 3 board. It's a different board to the one in this camera, but it is, pretty close to the same width. As you can see, hopefully you can see there, the width is pretty much the same, the height that way is pretty much the same. And if you put the camera on the board like this, let's put it around that side. If I can do this, excuse me while I try and stay in shot, but it's all difficult while I'm doing this. You notice that the depth required here is actually shallower than the Runcam 3. So you can move this right forward and put a nice decent lithium battery on the back, 3D print yourself a case, and you've got a GoPro Session form camera using these internals. And all you'd have to do is perhaps round off the corners of this board, because the square corners wouldn't gel properly with the round form factor of the Session or the Runcam 3. You could build your own Runcam 3 from your Runcam Split. The benefit of that is, of course, is that, and one of the other downsides of the Split is that it's not something you can easily transfer from model to model, because it's going to be bolted in and the camera's bolted in. You're not going to be able to move it from one quad to another during the day. You might from time to time move it to another quad, but it's nowhere near as easy to move as one of these. So although this is cheap, and this is another plus, this is only $70 or so. That's pretty cheap for a 1080p 60 frames a second high definition recording camera with FPV output. That's a pretty good deal. But if you've got one model, then that's fine. If you've got three models, then a $90, I think they're about $90 Runcam 3 when you could buy them, you'd only need one $90 camera for three models. With the Split, you need three cameras. So 3 7s, 21. $210 for three models with the Split, $90 for three models with the Runcam 3. So this is only cheaper if you only have one model and you only want to use it on one model. But if you build this into this form factor, then you get the benefit of the Runcam 3 at a much lower cost. Now, I suggested that Runcam do this, make a board that would fit inside an enclosure like that, and then simply publish or release the specs so that other people can create a 3D printing file so that everyone can print their own cases, or go and buy a 3D printed case from your mate or from Banggood or something. Then you've solved all the problems. Now, the reason Runcam had to discontinue sales of this in the States is apparently because it infringed on GoPro's intellectual property rights. But if they're not providing the case, there's no infringement. If you print your own case, no problems. It's a piece of cake. And I have to admit, I kind of wonder about that what they've said there, the excuse they've given that this infringes on GoPro's intellectual property rights. Because where are all the lawsuits against things like this? Where are all the threatening things to the people who make this camera, or the people who make this camera, or the people who make any of these high performance HD recording cameras? Got another one down here. I mean, do they not look like a GoPro? Do they really not look like a GoPro in so much as this looks like a GoPro Session? So why aren't these people? Why are these people still selling stuff into America, but Runcam is not allowed? That's a question I'd really like to know the answer to. Perhaps someone can tell us. So there you go, but it is a way around it. You could turn your Runcam Split into a Runcam 3 with a printed 3D case and a little bit of judicious filing if you wanted to. Yeah, keep me informed. If you're thinking of a project like that, I'd love to know more about it, and send me some information. I will publish it and point people in your direction on this channel. Okay, now I have to say, but the first time I saw the Runcam Split, I thought, I've seen this concept before. This isn't new. There's been another product on the market that was just like the Runcam Split, and you may remember it too. I'm going to show it to you. Let me just pull out a little bit here because I'll need a bit more space to show you this. Runcam Split, Foxtech product. I forget what they called this thing. Foxtech product. Look, do you see the similarities? Let me just, I'll put it around roughly the same way so we're comparing apples with apples. Camera, camera, see that? Camera. Flexi lead, processor board, processor board. There we go. This one had microphone, just like the Runcam Split. Has a, I think that's, I don't know, well, that's the microSD card. Down this end we've got a USB, HDMI, and this one actually had an LCD on it, so you could frame up your camera positioning. The Split doesn't, but you could also take this LCD off and just be left with the actual camera board in there. So this isn't a new concept at all, but why did this not succeed? Well, several reasons, and Runcam have addressed some of those. First of all, this camera sensor came with no mounting hardware whatsoever. There was no, this was it was just this piece of plastic. I put Velcro on mine, but it was still wibbly wobbly. There was no bracket or anything, so it was a faff of a thing to install. The Runcam comes with excellent mounting hardware, so they've addressed that problem. The other problem with this was that this lead between the camera and the processing board has a lot of connectors like the Runcam one, and it's quite long, and it caused a lot of problems with radio frequency interference on UHF systems. In essence, this was a giant antenna for a very noisy bit of circuitry in here and in here. So if you tried to use it on UHF, your plane fell from the sky very quickly. Now the question is, have Runcam addressed that problem as well? Is this going to be a quiet camera from a radio frequency perspective, or is it going to create so much interference that it causes problems even on 2.4? Because at the moment we've got 433 UHF, we've got the crossfire on about 886 through to 900 and something, and we have 2.4. They're our primary radio control frequencies. So this camera will need to be relatively quiet on all of those. The Runcam 3 is incredibly quiet. This is a really good camera, but that may be due to its very, very tight, very small form factor. There's no really long bits of wire in there. Everything is so close together that there are no antennas to radiate stuff. Will this lead here be the undoing of the Split? Let's throw it on the spectrum analyzer and see just how noisy or how quiet it is from an RF perspective. Okay, here's our Split. I've got the cable pretty close to the little stub antenna here, so I would expect to pick up any noise that may be radiating from that particular cable. At the moment I'm on, let's go down to 433, the UHF frequency, where we'd like to expect to see any radiated noise. So there we go, it's pretty quiet down here. I'm going to turn on the camera. Just done its beeps, little lights going. Now it's active. Did we see any noise increase there? Virtually nothing. I'll just go through that cycle again so you can see. Power the camera off. It takes a while to shut down because there's a lot of capacity in the power supply. So that's off now, and I'll turn it on. Hopefully you can hear the beeps. Wow, that's virtually silent on 433. Let's turn the camera off again. Let's go up to the 900 or 866 megahertz region where the crossfire and is likely to appear. Where are we? Go back down here to, there's 900. I think that's probably my wireless microphone, I'm not sure, but the camera's off, so it's not the camera. Let's fire up the camera. Utter silence. There's no noise on those UHF bands from this camera, no perceptible noise from this camera. It is brilliant. That cable is not radiating any noise. It's not going to cause your UHF model to crash. Love it. Fantastic. Really good job, Runcam. Let's just check 2.4 to make sure I haven't overlooked that one. We'll wind this baby up to 2.4 megahertz. .4. Get there in the end, don't worry, bear with me. 2.45, there we go. Powering up now. Nothing. No noise. No, this is dead silent. The noise floor has not changed, and we're only, I would say no more than 2.5 inches away from that cable with our antenna of our spectrum analyzer. That's brilliant. That's fantastic. I am really impressed with that. Okay, so I've retrofitted the X-Hover MXP200, nice little quad, retrofitted that with the Runcam Split. I took out the existing camera, which was a Swift. Here it is here. Ooh, excuse me. There's the Swift I took out. And I've put in the Split. Now, fitting the camera itself was a piece of cake because the adapter hardware that comes with it was a perfect fit, and it meant I could just put it in the existing X-Hover mount. The actual Split circuit board, that fitted really nicely on top of the stack. We've got a PDB, we've got the flight controller, we've got the Split. That all went really well. The little camera cable, just the right length to reach to the front of the quad. Yeah, I mean, it was great. Easy transition. And now, of course, we don't have to have any kind of HD camera on here to get the results we want. But the big question you're all asking is, how much does it weigh? Well, let's find out. Turn on the scales that don't show the blood. If they'll turn on today, there we go. And we're in grams because we are metric here at RC Model Reviews. Guesses, please, on the back of a $10 note. Here we go. Ta-da! 347 grams, ready to fly with everything except the battery. So there you go. That's pretty damn light when you consider that this is the equivalent of any quad with a GoPro on it or a Runcam HD or anything like that. It's that extra weight we've saved. Fantastic. So happy with that. I took it out for a bit of a fly, and well, the day's pretty murky, horrible light conditions. Normally, you know, the old CMOS cameras would look like crap on a day like today, but man, this thing really went well. I had no problems, perfect wide dynamic range. And the latency, well, I can usually tell if I've got excess latency when I do my first flip or roll because I tend to come out at a funny angle. Nah, I didn't even notice the latency, honestly. Now, I am Team Nana, so that's to be considered, but for your average, everyday, run-of-the-mill mini quad flyer, if you're not Chad Nowick or Tommy, oh my God, or you know, Mr. Steele, you ain't going to notice that latency very much at all. This is a really sweet setup. So cool. And perhaps one other gripe, they should have conformal coated that board. The Split board should have been conformal coated. And what's that? Well, it's kind of like a waterproof lacquer that you put on the board, and it stops water from affecting it because, as most of us know, certainly around here we've noticed recently, if you get your quad wet, damn thing stops working. And I don't want the camera to stop working as well. So conformal coat it, and it's much less likely to be damaged by rain, puddles, lakes, salt water, sulfuric acid, that sort of thing. You know, the stuff you usually encounter when you're flying in the park. So there you go. That's it. That's the Runcam Split, the camera I'd love to hate, but I can't. Damn it. So if you've got questions, comments, put them in the usual place. I'll do my best to address them. And stay tuned because I've got some other Runcam stuff coming up. I've got the Runcam Eagle 2, which is quite interesting. Runcam certainly seem to be on a roll with new products. And I also have coming up, while on the subject of cameras, I'm going to talk about the technology behind these cameras. What is the difference between a CCD and a CMOS camera? Why do CMOS cameras get jello and CCD cameras don't? So I'll be talking a bit about that, so you'll be able to, you know, work out for yourself what is most important to you. There you go. Thanks for watching. Oh, by the way, I'm going to be doing a lot of educational videos this month because the review queue is getting a bit short, so I'm going to be rolling out all the educational stuff that I've been actually filming over quite a period of time, but just haven't got round to editing. So stay tuned. Coming up. Bye for now. I've tried hard to hate this camera, but I can't. It's, what can I do? Anyway, I took it out for a fly, and, ooh, the power's gone off. Damn.